So redundancies you don't want to do is something like semirelin plus CJC1295, or CJC1295 plus tesamorelin, or semirelin plus tesamorelin, because they're essentially in the same category. One of them increases the frequency of the pulses that the pituitary gland produces of growth hormone, and the ipamorelin or the hexarelin or the GHRPs increases the intensity of the pulse. So by taking the combination of both, you increase the size of the pulse and the frequency of those pulses together, and in a great stack. You're better off taking something like ipamorelin and adding like CJC, or ipamorelin and adding tesamorelin, or ipamorelin and adding semirelin, because you're taking one off of both sides of the categories and you're allowing them to work in concert with each other for this great outcome.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the ManLab. So today, Alex is going to be taking us through different ways in which you can stack peptides. Now, obviously, not every peptide stack is really beneficial. There are some peptides that you don't necessarily want to stack together, and there are other ones that really work together to give you an outcome of 1 + 1 = 3. So Alex is going to be covering different ones so you can help better understand what might be best for you. And as always, just before we jump into this, T-Clinics USA does offer 10% off your first package with anything you want to take. So just head to tclinicsusa.com, go to the contact form, mention the ManLab, 10% off your first package. If you don't want to type that in, the link is in the description of wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. So Alex, first of all, thank you. What is stacking in general? Let's just keep it super general for anyone if this is their first peptide podcast.
Yeah, nowadays, we're getting so comfortable in the space of talking about peptides and taking peptides. People are looking for, what more can I take, or what two can I take? If one is better, is adding something to it going to make the results, more significant? Or if I'm already on something, can I add something else to it? Potentially that's in the same category or in a different category, and would the outcome be favorable or less favorable? So, this concept of stacking, of adding a few things together for a more efficient or effective outcome, is what a stack's really about.
Perfect. And so, most people are usually aware of the things like, put more together for a better outcome. Why, let's jump into the ones that you shouldn't really stack together. What are some peptide stacks that are
it's not so much redundancies more than anything. We all know, or I've heard of us talk about the CJC1295 and ipamorelin stack.
Yeah, which is funny because it's like
you think it's one thing, like CJC stack. Because each one individually doesn't really hold enough power to really provide enough of an impact to warrant its individual use. Mm-hmm. Ipamorelin absolutely is a phenomenal peptide by itself, but that was something like years ago that you would probably order or get by itself. And then, somewhere along the way, somebody decided to stack it with CJC1295, where the other way around, you wouldn't take CJC1295 by itself, but just because it's not really effective, by
it has
itself.
A very short half-life.
No, it has a long half-life, but
it's
very weak in its potency, so it doesn't really affect the body as strongly as it should. So the outcome for most people would be almost so minimal it wouldn't be worth doing. And there's other reasons why which we'll talk about in the stack in a moment, that some of these secondary peptides kind of clear the path for the other one to do its job better. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's just stay focused on, you asked a question about redundancies. In the world of growth hormone releasing peptides specifically, there's really two categories in that same one category. There's GHRH, which is growth hormone releasing hormone, and there's GHRP, which is growth hormone releasing peptide. Okay, they're both peptides. I don't know why one's called a hormone and why one's called a peptide, but I didn't make the rules, so I'm just here to teach you a little about them. So GHRP, growth hormone releasing peptide, is hexarelin, ipamorelin, GHRP6, GHRP2. GHRH, growth releasing hormone, is like semirelin, CJC1295, tesamorelin. So they're different. In theory, they're both going to make the body have more human growth hormone. So the theory of utilizing them for the outcome that they're looking to achieve is higher growth hormone values. A GHRP, which is a growth hormone releasing peptide, works via the ghrelin pathway, which has to do with the stomach. Okay, so and how the ghrelin activation can enhance growth hormone production, and that's why some of them actually make you hungrier. So if you've ever tried GHRP6, which I know you haven't, but for some of you listening to us who have, it was an old school peptide. It's super strong, but man, let me tell you something. You want to be hungry, like you want to take a peptide so you have an uncontrollable, ability to eat. Like we would take it years ago. And I remember one time my buddy and I took it and went to the all-you-can-eat sushi buffet, and I think I had like 106 pieces of sushi or something.
Jesus.
Like you just can't eat
So
enough.
it's like a Ibutamoren on steroids.
Oh my God, an instant. You took a shot. So originally, just a kind of super side note on this, they developed it for people who had really hardcore constipation issues. You would take an injection, it would get your GI tract moving, you would go to the bathroom.
Really? I just figured it was like you're trying to force the cork out.
No. That's how you take it, and as a thing, it's like you think drinking coffee and doing whatever makes you, nicotine makes you go to the bathroom. Like this is like clear your system, but then that also came with this uncontrollable, absolute ravenous like starvation, hunger. Blood sugar would feel like it would drop, but just stomach grumbling, and you just had to eat. Like you were supposed to take it, go to bed. Everybody gets out of bed and just goes in the refrigerator and makes like the peanut butter sandwich on a rice cake with crackers and cheese, and you throw turkey meat on it, like everything you can, like a stoner food, just craziness diet, So you would end up gaining like 30 pounds while on this peptide. But anyway, so it was a GHRH category. It affects ghrelin. Now, ipamorelin, although it goes through the ghrelin, doesn't really have an appetite stimulation effect, even though that's kind of the pathway it takes to get there. It also has a cool property in which it lowers somatostatin, which is the cutoff signal of growth hormone in the body. So it kind of suppresses how much growth hormone we can see or kind of utilize. So that's kind of why that statement I said before of why like CJC1295 clears the pathway ipamorelin clears the pathway. So using these two peptides together allow them to work, more dramatically. So in that category of growth releasing peptides, you have ipamorelin, you have hexarelin, you have GHRP and GHRP2, so GHRP6, GHRP2. Then on the other side, you have growth releasing hormones, which is your semarelin, your CJC1295, and your tesamorelin. Now, those are going to stimulate the pituitary gland to produce more human growth hormone. And now one of them, the growth releasing hormone, the GHRH, increases the frequency of the pulses that the pituitary gland produces of growth hormone through the night or through the day. And the growth releasing, peptide, which is the ipamorelin or the hexarelin or GHRPs, increases the intensity of the pulse, right? So your pituitary gland works in kind of these rhythmic pulses and says produce growth hormone, whether it's frequent or the pulse is large. So by taking the combination of both, you increase the size of the pulse and the frequency of those pulses. You also clear out that somatostatin that inhibits growth hormones, stimulation, absorption. So that combination of GHRP, PH, and GHRP together end in a great stack. So redundancies you don't want to do is something like semarelin plus CJC1295, or CJC1295 plus tesamorelin, or semarelin plus tesamorelin, because they're essentially in the same category. And although they will have some level of complementary effect, it's not really like the best way to go about a stack. You're better off taking something like ipamorelin and adding like CJC, or ipamorelin and adding tesamorelin, or ipamorelin and adding semarelin, because you're taking one off of both sides of the categories and you're allowing them to work in concert with each other, for this great outcome. And so if you don't have access to like, for example, CJC1295, or maybe your body can't handle it or you have an intolerance to it, you can pull off like semarelin, or you can pull off tesamorelin as a substitution. And likewise, if you for some reason can't get or don't utilize ipamorelin very well, you can add in hexarelin or one of the GHRPs.
That makes sense.
You don't really see GHRPs much anymore. I think it just has to do with a lot of people just can't handle that stimulation of hunger, and the blood sugar kind of drops. GHRP2 is a little more known for its fat reduction. GHRP6 a little more bulking due to the calorie intake. So what's probably the most popular peptide on the market is either CJC1295 plus ipamorelin or tesamorelin and ipamorelin combination, which is probably my go-to favorite nowadays.
Tesa-Ipa?
Tesa-Ipa is really awesome.
Really?
You're taking the two best in both categories and you're combining them together to very much get 1 + 1 = 5.
Yeah. Do they come pre-mixed at the moment, or is it
so there are some companies that do mix them. You just have to know where to look to get the proper combinations. And then you have to be careful to understand the proper dosing, because obviously you have to make sure you take enough Tesa to make it work and enough IPA to make it work. And you got to look at what that blend looks like initially and then decide, does this one bottle, justify like a true therapeutic dose, or is it maybe a 2-week bottle as opposed to, being a full 1-month bottle? And Semarelin, likewise, you could add it to an ipamorelin and get a benefit. But if you have your choices and you're able to pick off of the menu whatever you choose, my advice is to go with Tesa plus IPA. Now, so many people will say, Alex, I argue this point. I like CJC1295 better with ipamorelin because it has a longer half-life to it. So CJC has like the longest half-life of all these peptides. It makes it last longer, so it does improve sleep pattern better, because if you take a shot at night, you get into that deep wave of sleep and it lasts all night long versus, tesamorelin, which is its upgraded version in its category, doesn't last as long in the body as CJ can. CJ just unfortunately has a lot of, allergy issues and intolerance issues that some people just can't handle. And if you're looking for visceral fat burning and body fat reduction and muscle mass growth and just aggressive like growth hormone benefit, you guys have heard me say it before, to me, testosterone is way more superior.
Quickly, before we get back to the episode, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't on whatever channel you're watching or listening to the ManLab. And if you're listening on Spotify, if you could leave a 5-star review on the channel page, that would be greatly appreciated, because that will help continue to push it a little bit further for whoever is looking for information to help improve their health. Now, on the topic of information, if you are on YouTube, you can leave a comment below on this episode and we will respond to it with as much information as possible, or it might be another episode down the road. The reason this is important is because the more questions you guys ask, the more we know what we need to do to serve you guys better in future episodes. So comment on YouTube, leave a 5-star review, hit subscribe, and let's continue to help making men great again. Let's get back to the show. We're going to take a break to quickly talk about Nuviva Medical Weight Loss. They have helped over 50,000 men and women across the state of Florida and other states as well throughout America lose those unwanted pounds and keep them off long term. Now, they don't do cookie cutter methods. They're going to make sure that you have your own system that will cater to your current lifestyle to help with your transition into making healthier long-term habits, so that it's not this unsustainable short-term hop on, hop off situation. Now, there are different methods you can do. You can choose different diets like keto, intermittent fasting, or whatever is going to suit you properly. You can do just diet and exercise with the proper nutrition, accountability, as well as coaching. Or you can also opt into having medical support as well with GLP-1s or GLP and GIP combinations to help with that appetite suppressant. These are very useful because what happens is you can use that as a spanner in the works, satiate yourself in the short term while you're building those habits long term. They get you off those medications so you're not relying on them like other places out there that love to just keep throwing you the medication. They're gonna make sure that you can get off it, build sustainable habits long term, and they have seen people lose upwards of sometimes 80 to 100 pounds and keep it off for years to follow. So if this sounds good to you, head to nuvivaweightloss.com. That link is in the description of wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. So if that sounds good to you, head to nuvivaweightloss.com. That link is in the description of wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. And let's go and kick some goals and make your life that much better with those extra pounds lost and gone for the rest of your life. Let's get back to the show. Interesting. And are there any other sort of stacks that we would deem redundant?
I think there's some redundancies in people using obviously 2 GLP-1s that are both peptides. I mean, you wouldn't want to use like tirzepatide, which is GLP-1 and GIP, along with semaglutide, because semaglutide is a GLP-1 agonist, where tirzepatide is a GLP-1 agonist plus a GIP peptide. So taking them two together, you might as well just take tirzepatide because it already has the semaglutide included in it. And if you're being or found available at a retatrutide, it's what tirzepatide is plus an additional glucagon peptide added to it. So any of those three kind of combining them seems to be, in my opinion, a little bit of redundancy and waste. And you could get creative and argue that with me and say, yeah, I need that extra little semaglutide because it really is the appetite controlling, component of that GLP-1 drug. And I like the smooth and the muscle mass benefit that, retatrutide offers, or I like the, blood sugar regulatory benefit that tirzepatide offers. Why would you add semaglutide? Because I would say, well, because I don't feel like there's a strong enough appetite control, to the latter two. But again, redundancies are what we're trying to just speak about. And then there's some reality of like, you don't want to take like a fat loss peptide, something like AOD 9604, and combine it with something like GHRP6, for example, because they defeat the purpose of each other. One's an appetite control and an appetite stimulant. And yes, again, you could argue with me and say there's reasons to fit them in a protocol, but I think there's way better choices that aren't going to fight against each other for the outcome that they're intended for.
Okay.
So there's not so many choices that I would sit here and say you're choosing wrong.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that you could choose better.
So the overall thing's like, don't stack within the same category because that becomes redundant.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, like
TB500 and BPC.
right. I was
like
about to talk about that. So when you're talking about healing, there's different receptor sites and there's different peptides that achieve that process. So BPC and TB500, which create the Wolverine blend, they're not really redundancies because they do the same job differently. They don't go after the same pathway. They don't hit the same receptor site. They have strengths and weaknesses in slightly different categories. And so the process of healing for most people, it's first off a short-term thing. So you want to hit it with as much strength and ammunition and from as many angles as you can.
Yep.
Where that stack makes sense. And you're not going to sit here and hear a lot of people say, oh, but you're wasting that one peptide because you're already using the other. No, the other one's kind of max out its potential benefits. And where it has gaps, the other peptide fills those gaps in.
Yep.
And again, this is in the measures of healing, in my opinion, pull out, as much artillery as you can. So probably the only true, like, there are peptides that have come out over the years that have been designed to take other peptides places. And although not peptides, but probably just fit for conversation purposes, HCG and gonadorelin, right? They're both doing the same job. One does it a whole lot better. Why would you use the worst one? For no reason.
Which is the worst one?
Gonadorelin, like HCG is superior. There's no point in taking gonadorelin with HCG at all. Like you're basically just taking a shot of a shitty version of the same strong thing you already have access to. Like you're not going to go out a night of drinking and intentions to get drunk and take shots of vodka and then periodically take a sip of wine. Like, like it doesn't make sense, right? So it's so weak comparably. So that falls into category redundancy.
Gotcha. Okay. And so let's look at like what would be like 3 of your suggestions that you give clients for peptide stacks?
People come to us with all sorts of ways of life and wellness initiatives, but I mean, majority of people fit into certain categories, and I think like the general purpose of, I want to lose weight, right?
Yeah.
And so, if appetite control is a problem and food intake and diet is not perfect, a GLP-1 drug obviously is going to be selected number one because that is probably the most bang for your buck. It's going to help control appetite and reduce food intake and help your body blood sugar control. But the buck doesn't stop there because what it doesn't do is it's not great at like muscle retention and metabolic health stimulation, and it's not going to crank up the temperature on your metabolism. So then I suggest utilizing a growth hormone peptide. But in that case, now I would say use a growth hormone stack, right? Because one peptide could do good in the peptide growth hormone family. Now this growth hormone stack would be better. So something like testosterone plus ipamorelin plus something like GLP-1 drug, tirzepatide, semaglutide, retatrutide, you're really not only just restricting what comes into the body, but now you're amplifying what comes out of the body and also this side benefit of retaining the good parts of your body, which is muscle growth.
Yeah.
And if you want to stack that even higher, like another stack up, and although it's not a peptide, but it's a product, like you could add something like SLU PP332, which is going to increase the body's like calorie burning effect. And so it would amplify, and now you have one BPC 157 plus TB500, which is 2 peptides, and you have CJC 1295, testosterone and ipamorelin, which is another 2 peptides, although by the way, these two would come in one bottle, and these two would come in one bottle. So CJ or Tessa and IPA would come in one bottle, and BPC and TB would come in one bottle. So you're only really taking 2 injections in order to get 5 products. And then you could take that slew, which is the next product. So it's like 5 items that's creating this really robust, badass package.
Yeah.
So that's one. I would say if your goals are to heal, like, listen, you have an injury and money's not really a problem for you, but you're looking for reasons to use stuff, but don't want to waste your money and don't want to take too much stuff. Again, number one, utilize BPC 157 and add that TB 500 component, which that combination Wolverine blend is going to be an accelerant to your healing process. But we all know increasing human growth hormone is going to speed up the healing process too. So a growth hormone peptide would be great. And now again, use something like Tessa and IPA. So you're using BPC, TB 500, testosterone, ipamorelin all together because you came to me with the desire to heal. And not only would I justify the fact that you're going to heal quicker, I'll say you're going to sleep better because of the because the ipamorelin effect. And so, of course, during night when you sleep, your body's healing better. I'm going to say your cellular activity is going to be healthier because that's what growth hormone does. You're also going to retain muscle during that time of your injury because that's what the growth hormone peptide does. You're probably going to reduce fat because that's what a growth hormone peptide does. Let's say you're concerned about gaining weight. Now you can add in a GLP-1 in order to prevent that weight gain and food intake gain. So as you can hear, these stacks are although sounding complicated, it's like each product seems to fit its strength into the category, into the part where the deficiency lies in that moment of your life.
Yep.
I'm not saying it's right for everybody at every point to have these really comprehensive, robust programs, but during certain moments of your life, it may not make sense to think one product can accomplish all.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before, that don't ask BPC 157 to do the job that testosterone can do. Mm-hmm. And likewise, don't ask testosterone to do the job that BPC can do a whole lot better. They both can do each other's jobs slightly, but that's not its strong suit. It has 90% benefit in the healing property, BPC 157, and maybe 10% property in anti-inflammatory or muscle retention, where testosterone is 90% anti-aging, muscle growth, body fat reduction, and 10% in increased speed of healing, right? Yeah. So although it's there and there's justifiable reasons to use it, don't really ask it to do the job that something else is and be disappointed when your healing doesn't happen as fast as you want it to. You got to pick off the menu of the item for the purpose in which it's intended for, but recognizing that you add something else to it, you're absolutely clearing its path to do its job clearer, but then supporting it because that other layer is absolutely gonna give it a better outcome.
Find out if you may have low testosterone for free with the ADAM test. Now, sometimes it's a little bit nerve-wracking to go into a clinic to get a full blood panel to find out your hormone levels. And sometimes you might just want to sort of kick the tires just a little bit. If you are that person, the ADAM test is for you. All it is a couple of questions that are completely non-intrusive, non-invasive, that will help give an indication to you whether you may or may not have low testosterone. And the best part is the ADAM test is accurate up to 88% of the time. So for something as simple as a questionnaire, that is a very high number. Now, if you want to make use of that, you can do it online right now. It takes less than 30 seconds to fill out, and it is at bit.ly/free ADAM test. That's free ADAM test. Now, if you don't want to remember that, the link is in the description of wherever you're listening or watching this podcast. And then after you've filled out the questionnaire, you will now have a better idea of whether you may or may not have low testosterone, and if you need to take the next step, which is a detailed blood panel with a clinic such as T Clinics USA. So again, to make use of that, go to bit.ly/free ADAM test, and let's continue to making men great again. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah, it seems like there's kind of 3, maybe 4 main pillars of stacking. You've got healing, you've got growth hormone releasing, and then you've got weight loss. And then for the 4th pillar, it would be something more cosmetic. So you got your copper GHRs,
Right.
You've got your NADs and all that sort of that rejuvenation part of it.
Yeah.
If you really had to look
athletes
at it
too, think about
simplistic.
athletes, right? Athletes are interested in being stronger and building more muscle tissue. And so like what does that stack look like, right? And so again, sometimes it's the same stacks, but we're just selling them differently.
Yeah.
Testosterone, Ipamorelin, like great for anti-aging and muscle mass growth. It's great to help you sleep better. You're going to repair quicker.
Tessa Ipa's the little out of people's budget. CJC Ipa's the alternative.
Right, it's cheaper, still extremely effective, right?
Yeah.
Tessa Ipa is number 1, CJ Ipa is number 2, and number 3 would be like Semarelin Ipa or Semarelin, Semarelin Hexamarelin, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on where you're getting these things. I've not seen that stack, to be honest with you, but
Ipamorelin seems like the
staple.
the good staple.
It's the cleanest, most kind of like well-refined peptide on the market. It's probably not the most potent by itself. If you have to just choose one peptide, you guys know my favorite is testosterone.
Yeah.
If I had to choose just one item without the secondary add-on, kind of stack one, is testosterone for many reasons. But yeah, I mean, Ipamorelin on the category of the GHRP side is absolutely like reigns supreme.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really have a second place, finisher. Like Hexarelin is there. It's not great comparably. It has more side effect issues and it definitely makes you hungrier. I don't really think it's a huge trade-off, and we have not near as much demand for it comparably.
Yeah,
But the muscle growth ones, you get those growth hormone peptides in your mix, and then, you definitely want a healing peptide. You want something like BPC-157 because although, you may not be injured, but the act of working out is injuring muscle tissue, and healing up faster in the gym is absolutely necessary, right? If you wanted to jack up your appetite and be hungrier so you can take more calories in to, of course, support your activity level, you could sub out the Tess and Ipa and put something like Ibutamoren in, which is the pill peptide, and you're gonna be super hungry.
Is there a way to have like Ibutamoren and then inject Ipamorelin? Or would that be a redundant scenario?
It's timing more than it is redundancy. Like you wouldn't do them at the same time. You would have to time them according to the day. So this is where you have people who take different peptides or the same peptide more frequently. Like they'll do multiple shots a day. Now, because they're working with it just depends on your comfort level with the shots and your timing. But, I do an injection in the morning sometimes, and then I always do one at night. But I'll do testosterone by itself in the morning for the gym, or IGF-1LR3, which is another great product that we don't talk a lot about, but we do offer, which we'll have another podcast on, by the way. But these peptides kind of play themselves to the time better. Like testosterone is really great in the morning because its half-life is shorter, so it doesn't really benefit sleep as great as something like the Tessa Ipa does, because Ipa is a great sleep aid peptide relatively. So yeah, you could take the two together, or like let's say you really want that appetite stimulation, take the Ibutamoren in the morning. That way through the duration of the day you're hungrier. And you have an elevated growth hormone, which is very strong. You have a growth hormone secretagogue. It's not a peptide, it's a secretagogue. And then at night before you go to bed, if you really want to continue that really high growth hormone production, take Tessa and Ipa before you go to sleep. And some people will say, well, this is overkill. And I'm not saying it's for everybody or not. You got to see how your body reacts. There could be some, water retention issues to be conscious of, and, blood sugar issues that you got to be mindful of, that having growth hormone cranked up like that for so long. There's some negative feedback at some point where the peptides aren't going to work as long and as good. So, you don't want to be cranking just like nonstop high dose growth hormone peptides all the time. That's why it is cool that we have a lot of options and you can switch from product to product. So within the stacking world, don't always think like one product is this choice or that choice. A lot of times it's this and it's working for you, so now let's add that because it's making that one better, and there's one more. And again, like I can sit here and talk to you 20 minutes long about why I believe the importance of each one adding to the previous one has not just a 1 + 1 = 3 effect, but why that new one is cleared out, or the previous one has cleared out like some of the kind of resistancy of the next one working as well as it should, and why it now is doing so much better. Because again, I mean, like you're not going to heal from an injury as good if you're not sleeping good. You're not going to heal from an injury as well if your growth hormone levels are in the gutter. You're not going to heal from an injury as well, if your gut isn't healthy. So it's like all these things start to make sense. You need your gut healthy, you need to sleep well, you need your growth hormone levels higher, you need your muscle to support, you want your skin to look good. But if you do heal good, so you want that GHK to be put in there, then you don't want your shoulders hurt, so you take that BPC 157. And so now you're like, wow, this list can go on and on. This rabbit hole can get deeper and deeper, and it can. And then there's like one-offs that you can add, theoretically, like you want cognitive sharpness, you could add something like, Cmax or dihexa, which are other peptides for neurological and nootropic effects. So it's not always, well, I got to stop this one and put this one in. Yeah. Continue this one because this one's allowing this one to now really work great. And of course, this is what can you afford.
What can you afford? Another question I've got too is like, a lot of concerns people have is like, liver toxicity. By adding some things like that, it's like, their concern, or is it?
No, there's no real toxicity on the body from peptides. So, I'm not saying that they go without risk, and there's things that should be assessed, obviously, prior to getting into it, and family histories of certain, issues, cancer, and check your blood sugar before coming into it. I think that there's certain degrees of responsible use of medication that should be applied to anything, and staying within the kind of, I want to say the word, respectful dosing schedules. Like you don't want to go completely ham and start injecting like a bottle worth of a product that's intended for a month in one day, because there's a diminishing returns, and once again, it becomes like a waste of money to take too much of anything.
It's having the right people sort of help you through it versus just buying it online and going like, wee.
Yeah, for sure. That's what professionals like us, exist for.
Yeah.
Like I can help a person who comes to me and says, this is my current problem, and I want to get from where I am from here to this point. What stack would you recommend? And then once I get there, what would I do to change that stack once that, for example, that weight loss is now off, but now I want to like tone down. So we would substitute one of those products for a different product. Doesn't mean the whole stack changes, but maybe one of those several products comes off and a new one goes in. And like anything else, it's like, tag me, I'm in and I'm out, and along the way, you're going to change these things up. And, not every stack works for every single person the same way. Not every product works exactly the same way. You'll find certain peptides that agree awesome with you and certain ones that just don't.
Yeah.
And that's important to recognize and pay attention to. Sometimes just because I'm going to sit here and tell me, testosterone's my absolute favorite, like Jeff would tell you differently. Like he has different opinion. He has a different peptide that he loves. I know you have a different one that you've tried. But it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It just means for me, my personal opinion. But I will say again, like that stacking concept, you just don't want to like be overly willing to just throw whatever you want at your body, unaware that yes, some kind of do the same jobs as each other. And when you're manufacturing these, like laboratory or creating them, oftentimes it's a molecule that just has a slightly different ending or alteration to it that changes some little minuscule part of it. And that's how drugs generally are, and why so many of them are so similar to each other. Anabolic steroids are that way. Like a lot of anabolic steroids just are slightly altered, and they have a different effect, but they're similar to their predecessors to a point, and there are some redundancies there. So rather than just taking like 3 products that ultimately do almost exactly the same thing and wasting your money and shot on that, pick something off of the different list and create a really cool outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that. And I didn't realize before, it's like there's kind of columns of what goes in a stack, and then that way you can build up appropriately from there. So
yeah, it's crazy because like, being in this industry, you hear about everybody who's super knowledgeable and some people that are some complete idiots, and clients are coming to me like, well, I'm taking this Semarone and CJC and Testosterone stack. I'm like, what? Why? Who came up with that? And they're like, I don't, that's what the guy sold me. And I'm like, no, man, like, okay, sure, it's working, and probably because the strongest one is as effective as it would be without the other two anyway. And so you might as well replace those other two, focus 100% of that money and effort towards the best peptide in that stack. And then let's add something new that like you're not using off the other category, and now really get this awesome ability. And it's like, shit, now this is really doing something different than what I was getting out of before. And if you don't know any different and you're happy with the outcome and it's working, and maybe it was an upsale, then, I'm not saying you got duped, but they probably could have done you better by explaining this to you better.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, don't do CJC with Testosterone, guys.
Yeah. Better choice.
Better choices. But yeah, guys, just first of all, remember, if you want to go to tclinicsusa.com, get 10% off your first package if you are a new client or just want to test out some things. make sure you mention the ManLab, that 10% off. Also subscribe to the ManLab right here, wherever you're watching or listening to the podcast right now, because we'll have more stuff with more information for your health. So thanks.
Toodaloo.